After whatever you tell them, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Well, yeah, I can't hear. It's just
All rise.
Everyone can have a seat. Everyone have a good lunch? Yeah. Good. Any further witnesses on behalf of the state of Ohio?
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to call Detective Greg Shepard.
Little maze here. You raise your right hand. You solemnly swear, affirm under penalty of perjury, your testimony in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, have a seat in the chair, pull yourself up close to the microphone, and you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Can you
sir.
tell this jury who you are and what you do for a living?
I'm Detective Gregory Shepard, and I'm a homicide detective with the Columbus Division of Police.
How long have you been with Columbus Police?
29 years,
How long have you been a homicide detective?
14 years.
And were you a homicide detective back in August of 2018?
Yes, sir.
What were your specific duties back then?
I was also on the CERT team, the Critical Incident Response Team.
When you say CERT, is that the abbreviation CIRT?
Yes, sir.
A Critical Incident Response Team. What did they do?
The CERT team handles all critical incidents involving the police.
Okay, so any time a police officer fires his weapon, does CERT go out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you do so on August 23rd of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Were you the one whose name came up to be the lead for this?
Yes, sir.
How do you guys determine that?
It's a rotation basis.
What does a person who is the lead investigator on a critical incident do in general?
Well, once we get to the scene, we have to decide who's doing what jobs, and that person kind of directs everybody as to what their job is going to be during that case.
Okay, and did you do that?
Yes, sir.
So are you responsible for making sure that the scene is photographed?
Yes, sir.
Do you do the photographing yourself,
No, sir.
but you authorize other people to do it or order other folks to do it?
Yes, we have our crime scene detectives actually photograph everything, but what we do is we assign a person as the scene detective, and they handle all the stuff dealing with the scene.
Does that also include things like roping it off?
Typically, the patrol officers will have that done before we get there.
Okay. Does that include collecting physical evidence?
Our crime scene, well, our scene detective, usually along with whoever the lead is, will typically walk the scene, find evidence. Then once our crime scene detectives get there, then they'll look for more evidence, And then the scene guy kind of directs them as to, you know, this is where we think it started, and then we go from there.
And are there folks assigned, or yourself or other folks that are assigned under you in a situation like this, tasked with finding civilian witnesses?
Yes, sir.
And in the end, does all of this stuff come back to you?
Yes, sir.
Is that your job as lead?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in this case, back in August of 18, when did you become aware that this involved Officer Andrew Mitchell?
Once we got to the scene.
Okay. You know Officer Andrew Mitchell, right?
Yes, sir.
What was your relationship like with Mitchell prior to this event?
We worked in the same unit together for, I don't know, probably about 4 years.
For 4 years?
Yeah, roughly around 4 years.
What unit was that?
A homicide.
Okay. And would you consider yourself friends?
Yes.
Okay. And back in 2018, at least, is this an area where basically what we've got is Columbus Police investigating Columbus Police
Yes,
on police-involved shootings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is this hard for you today to come here?
To testify?
Well, just the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, because it's a terrible situation and stuff, so yeah.
Okay. When you get to the scene, what is it that you see?
There was a couple of cruisers there. Mitchell's car was parked next to the building. And I believe the driver's door was open when we got to the scene.
Okay. And by the time you got there, was Andrew Mitchell still at the scene?
No, sir.
So he had already been taken to the hospital?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And by the time you got there, was Donna Castleberry still at the scene?
She had been transported also.
Okay. In the course of your investigation, were you able to determine, and again, let me ask you this, are you responsible for going to the coroner's office as well?
Yes, sir.
And getting coroner's reports, things like that?
Yes, sir.
DNA reports?
Yes, sir.
So things that are done sometime later even is still coming to you
Yes, sir.
as the lead in this case?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to determine how big of a person Donna Castleberry was?
Yes, she was, I think, about 5'6", 5'7", about 110 pounds.
Okay. And were you able to determine what her business was out there that morning?
Soliciting for prostitution.
Okay. Okay. And did you know whether in fact she had a warrant for her arrest at that time?
At that time, no.
Okay. Did you find out later?
Yes, sir.
And she did?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned that you saw Andrew Mitchell's car parked up against the building.
Yes, sir.
I want to show you a group of pictures. This is, Judge, if I may approach. This is what we have labeled H1. H1 through H68. I want you to just briefly kind of look through those. If you can tell us, well, first of all, this is the first time you've seen these, right?
Correct.
In fact, you've gone over them with me before.
Correct.
Okay. So what generally are this H series of photographs?
They're showing the apartment building, the actual numbers of the apartment building, the parking lot, the side of the building. It's just a general overview of the entire scene.
Okay. And do these photographs appear to you to be fair and accurate representations of what you saw out there back in August of 2018?
Yes, sir.
I'll pull some of them up individually. I don't mind. I'm going to go through all 68 here. What's if I may? So State's Exhibit H1, for instance, what are we looking at?
That's the front of 365 Yale.
And you were there yesterday with us, weren't you?
No, I didn't go to the scene. I just went
You
to the impound.
impound lot.
Yes, sir.
And why do you take or have photos taken of the front door?
Just so we can document this is the location of the incident.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit H4. What are we looking at here?
That's the side of the building, and to the left of the photograph is the city plane car.
Judge Mayer, approach the witness again.
Plane car, undercover car, I guess.
You may.
I'm going to give you the laser pointer so you can point up at the screen if it helps.
Okay.
When you say, for the record, he's talking about a dark colored car to the left of the building, right? And that's what you said is Mitchell's?
Yeah,
plane.
right there.
Okay. What's that bag behind it?
That was the bag, I believe that was in the back seat.
Okay. And if I show you what's been marked State's Exhibit H6, what are we looking at here?
This is the back side of the building, and here's the car with both doors open.
Okay. And there appears to be some defect with that car that we see there. What are we looking at there?
The back tire right here is flat.
Okay. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but do you know why that tire is flat?
Yes, because a bullet went through it.
A bullet went through it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you in fact recover a bullet from that tire?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit H8. What are we looking at here?
This car was parked in the back of the building, and that's one of the cruisers down there at the end that was blocking the scene.
Okay. And is that a dumpster behind the cruiser?
Right there, yes, sir.
Okay. As it relates to this car here with the GUE license plate, did that car turn out to be of any interest whatsoever in this scene?
No, sir.
Okay. Why do you take pictures, or why do you direct folks, or why does CSSU take pictures of things that end up not having anything to do with this?
Well, because we want to document the entire scene, what was there. Even though the car had nothing to do with this, we still just wanted to photograph it because it was there in the scene, so.
Have you had instances where later it turns out somebody brings up some issue where something is important that you didn't think?
Yes, sir.
So it's important to you to gather as much information you can?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State's Exhibit H11. What are we looking at?
That's the front of the car, the undercover car.
And that's a Mitsubishi Galant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State's Exhibit H14. What are we looking at there?
That's just another photograph, a closer up version of the vehicle.
Here we see in this photograph some cones apparently that have been laid down, numbered 1 and 2. Do you see those?
Yeah, number 1 is a gun, and number 2, I believe, is a cell phone.
Okay. And who puts those cones down there?
Our crime scene unit.
And why are those cones placed the way they are?
So they can document evidence, so they know what piece is what piece of evidence, and then when they give the paperwork to us, we can look it up and say, okay, we know 1 was a gun, 2 was this, and 3 was that, so we're not confused either.
Do you or one of your detectives that reports to you then complete a sketch later?
Actually, the crime scene detective will complete the sketch. Our scene detective will document what evidence was collected at the scene that day.
The next one is H15. And again, we see one of these cones. Can you tell us what that is?
Cone number 4 is right here, and those are handcuffs.
Are these handcuffs something that did play some role in this scene?
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit H18. Why is that picture taken?
Because right here you can see the defect on the top of the car where a bullet went through the top.
And in your experience, that appears to be a bullet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. H19.
That's just a close-up version of that photo.
I'm going to show you what's been marked H21. What is that?
That's the handgun.
Okay. And is this, appears to be a Smith & Wesson, is this Officer Mitchell's handgun?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to show you a little more close-up, H22, which is that same weapon. Can you tell us what the significance of this photograph is?
That is where the gun had jammed. I believe it's called a double feed.
Double feed?
Yes. So the gun will not fire in that position.
Can you tell us a little bit and tell the jury a little bit about how this type of gun works as it relates to automatic versus revolver, and what happens, what you should expect from shell casings, and why this is problematic?
I can try.
Okay.
So a revolver has a cylinder. It's the old cowboy style gun. So, you know, when you shoot it, the cylinder turns, and the firing pin will strike the back of the round and send a round down the chamber. With an automatic, once the top part right here, once you pull the trigger, this part will slide back. It will basically like grab the casing and shoot it out. Once it'll like flip it out, like you see in the movies when the guys are shooting and the bullets are flying everywhere. So that's what will happen. This double feed, I don't really know how that happened, but it did.
In your experience, would you be able to fire this weapon as it is right now?
No, sir.
And do casings at all, to any degree, help you determine where a firearm has been fired?
It can,
Okay. Casings generally go off to the right?
depending on the gun. Yeah, and the casings will bounce, just like you see in the movies. Like they're kicking out and they're hitting walls, or they'll hit something and they'll bounce. And like I might be shooting here, but if it hits this screen, it might bounce behind me. It might bounce over the top. So it's kind of hard to determine where the casings will go, unless there's nothing there that will obstruct them.
But there's a limit. They don't get ejected 100 yards down.
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you H25. Sorry, we need the lights again, Judge. Can you tell us what that is?
This is the front driver's seat. This piece of paper here is called a U-10-100. It's what we use when we arrest somebody to fill out the paperwork. And right here is the knife that Ms. Castleberry had.
Okay. I'm going to show you H26. What is that?
That's just a close-up version of the same thing.
And
Can't tell. It looks like there's something. Oh, I believe that's its holster right there in the seat.
This
It's just hard to tell with the light on it.
And in your investigation, was this holster, is this where it would have been kept, or was it moved?
I think it was moved during when he was trying to get his gun out.
Okay. During a struggle?
Yes, sir.
And this U10 of 100 appears to have what looks like blood on it?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned this knife was Miss Castleberry's knife. How do we know that?
Because his DNA was on the knife, and I believe her DNA was also on the knife.
But this is not his knife.
Correct.
Did you find another knife?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you find it?
In the back seat or on the floor inside of a McDonald's bag.
Inside of a McDonald's bag?
I believe it was McDonald's
Okay.
bag.
Fast food bag?
Yes.
What significance does that knife have, if any, to what happened inside that car?
Nothing.
What did you determine that knife was?
He had told us that he had the knife and he had to turn it into the property room.
So it was a completely separate knife.
Completely separate. It had nothing to do with this.
And was it open or closed when you found it inside?
It was closed.
H29. Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
This is the back seat, and this is like an iPod. And here's the bag. I think it was this first bag here that had the knife in it,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay. H30. What are we looking at?
This is just close-up of the tire that's flat here. And I think that's all that's in this photo.
Okay. H31. Can you tell what that is?
This is the driver's side door pocket. That's where he had put his city-issued cell phone to do the recording, so it was down in that door pocket.
So we've heard part of that audio here. Is that from that phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that, you indicated that city-issued phone that he would use?
Yes, sir.
And he would use those during solicitation busts?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were able to acquire that audio file, right? And
Yes, sir.
listen to it. H33. What are we looking at?
This is the back of the driver's seat with blood on it here. And this is a floor mat, but this is the back area of the car.
Were you able to determine from your investigation and when watching some of the first responders' videos and things like that, what Ms. Castleberry's final rest was in that vehicle?
It was on this side, on the driver's side of the vehicle.
Right behind this seat?
Yes, sir.
H34. What does that photograph show us?
Right here, there was a bullet hole right here in the seat.
Okay. And did that appear in your investigation, did that appear to be a bullet hole as a result of this altercation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State's Exhibit H37. What are we looking at?
This is the back of the vehicle, and here's a bag with some tools and stuff in it that was retrieved out of the back seat of the car.
Back seat?
Yeah, back seat area.
Okay. And during your investigation, were you able to determine if this bag or anything in it had any real role to play in the altercation?
No, sir.
Did you find any walkie-talkies?
No.
And none was logged? No walkie-talkie was logged into evidence or anything like that?
Correct.
And then we've got another series of photographs, just for clarification. H51, this appears to be that same firearm,
Yes, sir.
but now it looks like it's in a different place, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so why was this group of photographs made?
This is prior to them clearing the firearm. And typically, our crime scene will photograph, as it's found, and then they will stage the photo so that then they could clear it. So that way, we collect all the evidence.
Okay. And again, kind of along the same line, State's Exhibit H55.
That's the box here is the box that our crime scene unit uses when they recover a firearm. They always put them in the box. They unload it. Here's the empty magazine, and these rounds here are the ones that were still in the gun. And this one up at the top is the casing that did not eject.
And do you have one of the folks under your command at this time responsible for counting rounds and things like that?
Yes, it is. We always have two sergeants come out, and it was Sergeant Sicilian, I believe, on that day that did that.
We have a stipulation with him, so we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
We don't need to go in. All right. Were there any, during your investigation, did you come up with any civilians that might have been helpful to you?
We did talk to two.
Okay. And in general, who were they?
Randall Jackson and Caitlin Patton, I believe.
In your investigation, did either of those two folks see what was happening at the moment Ms. Castleberry was shot?
No, sir.
Okay. Did they in fact make contact with you at the scene?
Yes, when the first responding officer got there, he determined that they were at some point out there, so they put them in separate cars so that they couldn't talk and change their story, so we separated them.
Okay. And did any of them give you any indication whether these, what appear to be cameras on the outside, were working? Thank you, Judge. Did one of those or some other civilian at the scene indicate to you that there was videotape that might be working?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you directed to that?
Yes, sir.
All right, I want to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit H57. What are we looking at here?
When you walk into the front door, when you walk down this set of stairs here, to your left is this little like utility closet, and that's where the recording system was set up.
I'm going to show you H58.
And that's just the door open with the recording system in it.
Okay. And were you in fact able to acquire a videotape of the incident?
Yes, we got a search warrant, and we, at that point, took the video system.
It looks to me like there's more than one camera around that building. Did you get more than one video?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get more than one that had any good views of what was going on?
There was only one camera that worked showing the car once it parked.
And where was that located on that building?
It would have been on the far end of the building, I believe on the north end of the building. So it was all the way at the end, up at the top.
So if you're standing there in that parking lot looking at the front door,
Right.
and the dumpster's to your right, and Mitchell's car would have been parked there, or to your left, and he would have been parked there to your left front corner.
Right.
That camera is on the same side back corner?
Yes, it's, was that Sullivan right there? It's closer to the street down there.
Okay. Did you find, I guess first of all, did you learn about the fate of Donna Castleberry?
Yes, once we got to the scene, we always send officers in the squad with victims and officers. Once they got to the hospital, they had pronounced her at the hospital.
Okay. And amongst the things you found inside this car, did you find property of Ms. Castleberry's?
Yes, sir.
Did you find any drug paraphernalia or drugs of Ms. Castleberry?
Yes, sir.
What did you find?
We found like a crack pipe, and then we found like a piece of foil or piece of material that had heroin in it.
Do you remember how much heroin?
I do not.
Was
It was a small amount.
Small amount, so it's not distribution amounts? Just
Correct.
what we would call personal use amount?
Yes, sir.
I also, we've mentioned, looked at some things in the pictures, and I just want to bring a couple things out for you. First of all, I want to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit R1.
Yes, it's Mitchell's city ID issue.
Okay. And can you show that to the jury? And where was that found?
Next to the shifter, I believe, on the middle console.
Inside the car?
Yes, in the front seat area.
Hey, you want us to get gloves for him?
Do you want those? I don't know that anything else, well, the holster's coming out of the bag. Do you want gloves for the holster?
You got them, okay.
They're up there.
We got it, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I want to show you what's been marked R2. Take a wild guess what this is.
This is the holster that his gun was in.
And again, is this Amy Mitchell's holster?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it was found where we see in the picture on the front seat?
Yes, sir.
But you indicate that it probably been moved there during the altercation?
Yes, sir.
Do you know where it was prior to?
I believe he said it was down in the door, like between the seat and the door.
And would that be what you expect for someone who's trying to hide the fact that
Yes.
that they're a police officer and have a gun?
Mhm.
I want to show you State's Exhibit R4. And it's pretty tight, but I think you can tell what's in
Oh, this is the knife.
And this is the knife we see in those pictures
That's
on
setting
the
up in the
front
seat.
seat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We see some of these reports refer to what they call a Kershaw knife.
Mhm.
Is that what this
Yes, sir.
is? Okay. And then finally, these are all in one sealed bag, so it's marked States Exhibit R3. But I'll let you tell me what
Yes, this is the firearm that was used.
Rich's firearm.
Yes, sir.
And has the jam been taken care of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are there other things in that bag?
Yes, the magazines in here. These are live rounds, and I think this is the one spent casing that was in there. And these are the other spent casings that were recovered.
When you say spent casing, what do you mean exactly?
When I say spent casing, it was the one that actually held the bullet in it. So once it's fired and it's ejected, that's our spent casing.
Did you collect all of those casings and send them to the Columbus Crime Lab?
Yes, sir.
And for what purpose?
Even though we know that there was only one gun used, we still have to say that those casings came from that gun. So we had the casings compared to the gun.
And we'll have a stipulation as to those reports as well, so. Yeah, and you were having these tested, but was there ever any question? Who shot, what gun, that kind of stuff?
No, sir.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit M1. I'm sorry. My approach to it.
I'll take these off.
Yeah. Can you look at M1 and M2 and tell me if you recognize those?
Yes, M1 is a sketch of the overall scene, and M2 is a sketch of what they did inside the car.
Okay. Just a second. I'm going to publish what's been marked States Exhibit M1. And what are we looking at here?
Well, here's the building, and here's the undercover car, and this is the cruiser of the first officer that arrived at the scene.
And it looks like there's a key of some sort or a log.
Up here at the top, yes, it just documents what evidence is laying around out here. Like one is the gun, as we saw the cones earlier. So this just kind of shows the list of evidence that we collected outside.
Okay. And do these numbers match up with those cones that we saw in the pictures?
Yes, sir.
So cone number 4 was right by the handcuffs.
Yes.
In the pictures, is that, so number 4 is the handcuffs?
Yeah, number 4 is the handcuffs here,
Okay.
and then they put that little arrow there so you can see it, but it's right there.
Okay. And then what is States Exhibit M2?
This is just a sketch of the interior of the car. We have the same little legend over here on the side showing what evidence was collected.
Okay. And there were more bullet defects in that car than just the one on the headrest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At some point, did you have any folks on your team or crime scene search unit that would report back to you kind of try to figure out how many bullet holes were in that car and where they came from?
Yes.
And how did they do that?
Well, once we started processing the car and we collected the evidence, we took the car to our impound lot where you guys were at yesterday. That when we pulled in that little building that was sitting there, we take the cars in there. And that's where they collected the evidence because they wanted to kind of be almost a sterile environment when they were collecting the evidence. They ran dowel rods through the holes to determine the angles, so that way we can determine which way the gun was fired.
Did you also have work of that nature farmed out to another agency?
Yes, sir.
Who did that for you?
The Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI.
And did they do a similar investigation as far as bullet trajectories go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if we go back to State's Exhibit M2 here, I'll just go down the list. Number 1, it's hard to read, but it's a plastic tub, lid, aerosol cans, gloves, traffic vest, bullet strike.
Yes.
What is that? Is that a tub? What is that?
It's a plastic, like the plastic totes where you put your stuff in. It was in the trunk of the car.
And then number 2 is spent projectile. What's that mean?
The actual bullet that came out of the gun, came out of the casing, it had went through the seat and into this plastic container. And then once they took everything out of the container, they found the projectile laying in the bottom.
And did that projectile match something that occurred during this altercation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you checked bullet trajectories and recovered projectiles, was there ever any indication that a shot was made from the front seat to the other side of the front seat?
As far as like casings or anything like that?
Not but bullet trajectories. In other words, were these generally all fired front to back, front to side? How were they generally fired?
Well, the one that went through the roof where you saw the picture, that was from front to back. This one that also went through the tire was front to back. The one that went through the seat and into this tub was front to back. The other ones we couldn't determine if they were all fired in the back or front or side or.
Did you ever find any blood or DNA evidence in the front seat?
Only, I think on his seat, we had some blood, his blood on the front seat.
Okay. 3 on this is the Cpd Id Badge that we just showed the
It's
jury,
right
right?
here.
Okay, and that's where that was found?
Yes, sir.
4, it says is the U-10-100. Is that what we saw in the picture?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 5 indicates a folding knife.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 6 indicates a black leather holster.
Yes,
And
sir.
are these documenting the things we've just shown the
Showed it.
jury here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 7, a gray bag with contents.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
That bag belonged to Miss Castleberry.
Okay, so when you talked about finding the heroin and things like that, is that where that all came from?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 8 and 9 are spent casings.
Yeah, this is 8 right here on the front seat,
Okay.
and then 9 is back here.
Okay. And these are casings we're talking about from a firearm that's been fired, and those casings have been ejected.
Yes, sir.
And regardless of bouncing, this is where they landed.
Yes, sir.
10 as well, says spent casing.
Yes, right here.
11, it says folding knife found in paper bag. What is that?
That was the knife we talked about earlier. It was inside of like I said, a brown bag.
12 is a spent projectile.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and again, that's different than a casing, right?
Correct.
When we say spent projectile, we're talking about the actual bullet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 13 and 14 spent casings.
Yeah, here's 13, and here's 14 right here.
Okay. And 15 spent projectile.
Down here in the tire.
And that's the one you pulled out of the tire.
Yes, sir.
All right. How many shots did you determine, and we'll go into specifics with the stipulation, but how many total were fired from that firearm?
6.
You talk about doing investigations at the impound lot, retrieving evidence, having some of these reports. Did you provide access, the same access to these kind of things and reports to defense investigators as well?
Yes, sir.
Did you, as part of your investigation into this case, follow up and go to the hospital?
To talk to Detective Mitchell?
Yes.
I did not. I believe Detective Connor was the one that went to the
Okay.
hospital.
Aside from talking to him, was there an effort to document his injuries?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were photographs taken of him and his injuries?
Yes, sir.
May I approach with it?
You may?
Let me show you what's been marked States Exhibit K1 through K6. Can you take a look at those and let me know if you know what they are?
Yes, these are photographs of Detective Mitchell's right hand.
Do those appear to be fair and accurate representations of the injuries he suffered
Yes, sir.
that day?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked States Exhibit K1. Sorry, Melissa. And that appears to be his right hand.
Yes, sir.
And this is a wound from, in your investigation, to determine how that wound was put there?
From the knife that Ms. Castleberry had.
And that's the knife we see sitting in the front seat
Yes, sir.
in those pictures? Okay. Did you, well, you've mentioned already to the jury that you went to the impound lot. Right?
Yes, sir.
I have a series of photographs labeled F series. It's F1 through 62. Kind of the same thing. Can you look through those and let us know if you know what those are?
Yes, these are the car. We have tow trucks. Like we'll have a tow truck tow the car, but we have a cruiser follow the car to make sure that nobody messes with the car. And then it's put in our secure building. Like yesterday, I had to get the lock, the key to open it and all that stuff. So once they put it in there, the only people that have access to that building are crime scene people. So we have to meet them out there and they have to let us in the building. So we can't even get in it. But this is photographs of the car in the building.
And you've seen these photographs before?
Yes, sir.
Are they all generally fair and accurate representations of the work that was done in the impound lot at this time?
Yes, sir.
And just for reference, States Exhibit F4. Is that the same car?
Yes, that's the car inside of one of the bays, and there's our crime scene van outside.
Okay. And approximately how long after the event, the altercation that happened, did this car make it down to the impound lot, if you can remember?
It was the same day.
Same day? Okay. And you said you like to keep it pristine and keep things kind of where they are?
Yes, sir.
Okay. States Exhibit F6. We still see the same knife and holster and U-10-100 there?
Correct.
Is that the same ones from when it was at the scene?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here's States Exhibit F10. What is this?
That's the trunk of the car, and here's the plastic tote that we were talking about earlier.
And that's where one of the projectiles, one of the 3 projectiles was found
Yes, sir.
in the car? Okay. States Exhibit F11. What are we looking at here?
Right here is where the projectile went through the seat, the back seat.
F13.
That was the photo earlier, but it was kind of far off that they took at the scene. It's the same photo of where the bullet went through the seat.
You mentioned dowel rods
Yes,
that they
sir.
use, CSSU. I'm going to show you States Exhibit F15. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, sir.
What's, like, where's the hole here?
It's right here.
Okay, so for the record, you're talking about the, looks like the back seat armrest
Yes, sir.
that's pulled up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's the purpose of these dowel rods?
Like I said earlier, just to show trajectory. We know that's where the bullet went through the seat, so they will line up the dowel rod through the seat so we can kind of show angles, so we can try to determine where the shot was fired from.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we have a witness from BCI who's going to talk about that.
Okay.
But just to give a general idea, F-16, is this a continuation of that same dowel rod?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we're looking at the what from here?
This is looking from the driver's side into the trunk, and here's the tote, and that shows you the rod going through.
Okay. And F-19, is this the same one?
Yes, just from a different angle.
Okay. F-22 appears to have a cone in it. Now, what's that cone marking, if you can tell?
That is where the bullet came to rest. The cone is just kind of sitting on top of it.
Let me give you a closer up one, sorry about that. F-23,
Yeah, it's like right there.
okay. And then F-24,
That's the projectile after they took it out of the tote. They wanted to show in a better light, so they photographed it in their hand.
I'll show you what's been marked F-27.
This is a dowel rod. This is the rear driver's side seat. And here's a dowel rod going through the seat, and this is the one that went into the tire.
And F-28, is that a continuation of that same one?
Yes, you can see the dowel rod right here into the tire.
Okay. The F-34,
That's Mitchell's ID right there.
and these are all still at the impound lot?
Yes, sir.
F-39,
That's Miss Castleberry's bag.
and is this where you found the things we were talking about that belonged to her?
Yes, sir.
F-48,
This is the knife we were talking about that was inside the bag. That's just it outside laying on the bag.
and again, you've marked a lot of things in here, is that correct? Just because you don't know for sure what's going to be important at the time?
Correct.
Amongst the things collected by your crime scene search unit folks, I think you've mentioned, or you or crime scene together, you've mentioned all this stuff we've seen pictures of. Is it your job to collect body-worn camera as well?
We actually have a person that takes care of collecting all the cameras.
Okay. Clothing?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
collected?
Mhm.
Okay. Do any of your folks follow the decedent down to the coroner's office?
Yes.
In this case, who did that?
I'm not sure which officer did that.
Okay. Did you also go
No, I just went to the autopsy the next day.
the next day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In identifying folks who have been killed in these kind of situations, do they take fingernail scrapings?
Yes, we request fingernail scrapings and fingerprints.
Okay. And would that have been done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned that you went to the morgue during the autopsy.
Correct.
Was that the next day?
I believe it was the next day.
I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit 01. Recognize that document?
Yes,
What is that?
it's a body diagram.
Okay. Did you prepare this?
Yes.
So as part of your job as lead investigator, you're trying to figure out how she died,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
And I believe we've accounted for, up to this point in your testimony, 3 spent projectiles, right?
Yes,
In the
sir.
car?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you said there were 6 shots.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to show you, or place up here, State's Exhibit 01. And I guess let's go by the numbering system you've used with the front view of the female form here on the left. You've listed one as gunshot entrance wound 1.
Yeah, that's right there.
Okay? And then is there a corresponding exit wound to that one?
Right here.
Okay. And we have gunshot entrance wound 2.
Which is right here.
Okay? And that would be front left leg?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then it looks like, is there an exit wound to that?
Right here.
Okay, so that bullet goes from the front through the back
Correct.
and out the back of her shin on the left, right?
Yeah.
And then does it come back into her body?
Right here in the back of her hamstring, I guess you'd say.
Okay, and is that bullet found there?
No, it came to rest right here in her left thigh.
Okay. Now, what does that indicate to you as far as, I know positioning is tenuous when we start talking about where people are when they get shot in bullet pads.
Mhm.
Is there anything you can deduce from that pattern?
That maybe her leg was bent.
I'm sorry?
Bent. The leg was bent.
The leg was bent?
Yes, sir.
So it went through the front, out the back, and then back into the thigh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicated it was found toward the front?
Yes, on the top part of her thigh.
Okay. And then gunshot entrance wound 3,
It was right here.
and was that one recovered?
It was right here.
So we've got, at this point, accounted for 3 bullets in the car,
Mm-hmm.
2 recovered from Ms. Castleberry.
Correct.
And then where's the 6th one? Do you know?
We believe the 6th one is the one that went through the roof because we couldn't find it. We looked outside in the area, we just couldn't find it.
So that's probably one that just
Just
went on
kept
there.
going. Yes.
So in your mind, are all the rounds accounted for that were fired?
Yes, sir.
I want to show you some photographs. Judge, may I have just a second?
You may.
Can I approach witness?
You may.
We have a G series of photographs. There were
Okay.
130 of them originally, and I pulled out 9. And these are somewhat sensitive, because, well, I'll let you tell the jury what these 9 photographs are.
These photographs are of Ms. Castleberry as they were processed, before they processed her body.
So these are her at the morgue?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, and I don't necessarily want to publish them right now. Now, let me just, I'm going to be, this will go back, I assume. Jamie. Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit G2. What is that?
That's a photograph of Ms. Castleberry with the device around her face, is them performing life-saving measures.
G24.
That's a photograph of her leg.
So this is this the front where that would have gone in?
Yes.
Okay. And then G27, does that help complete the picture there?
Yes, sir.
What is G27?
Here's the exit, and then this is the entrance.
Call that, I guess, a re-entry?
Yes, re-entry.
Okay. And then G119,
That is one of the spent projectiles.
I'm sorry?
That's a spent projectile from the thigh.
Okay. And then G128,
That's the other one, number 3.
is that the one that entered here in the chest?
Yes, sir.
Landed in the back?
In the back, yes.
We talked a little bit before about you acquiring the video and the audio that
Yes,
relates
sir.
to this. When you took that video, did you take any measures, or when you obtained that video, did you take any measures to make sure it wasn't tampered with?
Correct.
What'd you do?
Well, initially when one of the people at the scene said that there was a camera right there that would show that. We were able to view it there at the scene, and that camera didn't work. So we then took, once we got our search warrant, we took the device because we were told that the owner of the building could erase the stuff from his phone. So we immediately unplugged it so that he wouldn't have that opportunity. We then, once we got a search warrant, we took it, turned it into our property room, and then we have a digital forensics. He's a police officer, and he downloaded, I believe it was 72 gigs worth of data off of the system.
Okay. And so you were able to acquire this video, you acquired the audio, right?
Yes, sir.
And they're two separate things?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you able to, after you acquired all of this evidence and the videos as well, and I want to just step back a second, did you have access to a written statement by Andrew Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's a procedure for that, sir? How do you guys do that?
Typically, when we have an officer-involved incident, in this case, because he was in the hospital from his hand, because he had to have some surgeries and stuff on his hand, it took a little longer to get the statement. But he meets with his attorney, they give the statement, then they come in, they send it to us, we formulate questions, and then when he sits down with us, we go over the statement with him, and we ask him the questions.
And then is he, at that point, privy to any of the videos or anything? Has he been able to see any of that stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Afterwards, the second time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you did that in accordance with procedure in this case as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have, and then getting back to this audio and video, we have an audio which we're going to mark as, or I'm sorry, a video which we're going to mark as V1. Can you describe for us what that video looks like, just in general, the first one you saw?
You can see the car, but it's like, if you guys are sitting up there looking at it from where you are, this is what the car looked like, because it was so far away. You can't really make out any, I mean, you can see stuff, but you can't make out what's going on in the car because of the distance.
And so as a result of that, did you, are you aware of someone being asked to help enhance that?
Yes.
And do you know who did that?
I can't think of his name right now, but he works for the Ohio Organized Crime Commission.
Okay.
He works there, and they do video enhancements.
That'd be David Loomis?
Yes, Mr. Loomis.
And then what do we see when we look at that enhanced video?
What he was able to do is, because it's an old system, it's still kind of grainy. You can't do a lot with some of that stuff just because of the technology, but he was able to pull it up into a box, and it's a little bit bigger. And you can see the car in the box.
Okay. And then, to your knowledge, did your office or our office have these things sent to someone else to marry the audio and the video together?
Your office did.
Okay, and have you seen that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you saw that when we were at a prior hearing on this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we're gonna mark that, the enhanced video as V2, and then the marriage as V3. And Judge, I would like to show V3 at the moment.
All right.
Sorry, that's my fault. Went back from lunch and I didn't. Can you tell us what we're looking at here generally?
Yes, this is the back side of the building, and this little box here is where the car actually initially stops. And this box here is his enhancement.
And we're starting to hear some audio on this. You heard some ruffling or something.
Yes, sir.
Is that, to your knowledge, the audio that we pulled off of that cell phone of Andrew Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Detective, is this, whose voices are we hearing on this?
Ms. Castleberry's and Mr. Mitchell's.
Okay, and we're not seeing them on the screen here at the moment, and why is that?
Because he just picked her up.
Okay, so he's still out on Sullivan or somewhere picking her up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Melissa, do you have volume control at all? Because it may need to be up here at the beginning, at least.
Up higher?
Yeah.
We have so many cars in it now. Are you? So how are you doing? $700 worth of work later. My daughter's birthday.
It's 13.
You know,
Detective, at the 2:32 mark on the video here, going by the file time, not the time on the screen, is this Andrew Mitchell's car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess one thing is the time on the date stamp and time stamp on the video, is that generally accurate, perfect, accurate, not accurate at all? How would you describe that?
The date was correct, but I think the time might have been off. I can't remember, but I know the date was correct.
Is that common with videos at the times a little off one way or the other?
Yes, sir.
Police. Real police.
I ain't trying to kidnap her or anything. You got no weapons on you, do you?
Hold on, let me see it.
You got any warrants? 50 chat? Come on, I know we can get up.
So where's your bag?
I'm falling apart. Don't worry, it's my handcuffs. Don't be all flying.
Oh, I didn't say that.
I'm gonna cuff you just for my sake. I'm not gonna do nothing to you. I'm just gonna cuff you.
No, I'm not giving him handcuffs.
You're being under arrest. If you don't have any warrants, I'll let you go.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to see some other type of ID badge.
I just showed you my ID. I don't have my badge on. I'm calling my buddy.
I'm gonna have to see that. I'm not gonna follow that. I'll go ahead and hold myself.
What's this street?
This is Yale.
You know what?
Detective, I'm hearing little clicks. Were you able to determine what that was?
No.
Do you know whether or not Andrew Mitchell was texting other folks of his?
Well, I believe he texted Laura Evans.
Cause I know how the whole body situation works.
No radio.
I've never had any of this happen like this before, so.
Why? Because I don't have my badge. I left on my police shirt.
You don't have your badge, you don't have your walkie-talkie,
Yeah, I do.
you don't have any of that.
You can
What is that? Doesn't mean anything to do.
complain.
This is what for.
Vice.
Right, you get that in the courthouse.
Right. So I'm a policeman.
You can get that out of
Handcuffs, ID, or what you want.
Can you help me, please?
Help you what?
Call the police for me.
I am the police.
Detective, we see a person, or at least the legs of what appears to be a person, walking behind the car.
Yes, sir.
You ever were able to determine who that person was?
Randall Jackson.
Please.
No. Police. I know you're not. And that's false identification right there. That can get you in a lot of trouble with doing stuff.
When he's tracking me in and saying he was a police officer and he was not a police officer.
Yes, I
He's
am.
acting like he's a police officer. And he's not. He has this in a fake ass badge. Kidnapping women. I've already heard about him and he already is wanted. This cops have been showing the picture, you know that, right?
Yeah.
They've been showing the picture.
Say fuck you. I'm not.
Don't put your hands on me. Don't put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me. Don't put your hands on me. Help! Help!
She got a knife.
Help!
Cut me.
Help! Get it off of me!
Just cut me.
Help! Help! Help me, please open the back door. Help me! Open the back door. He's got me. Help me!
fucking nightmare. Police, 911. Good night. I'm the police. Hurry. Fill my bleeding bag. She got me. Shit. Fuck. Fuck. I told you I was the police, man. I showed you my ID. She fucking knifed the shit out of me. Bellows and Yale. Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm taking my shirt off and I'm wrapping his hand up so the pressure is stopped. He's cut pretty bad, man. His hand is wide open. You gotta put pressure on it. Yeah, he's an officer. I don't know who my call calling. Is that tight enough?
Yes.
You need it tighter.
I'm cool.
Okay. He's gonna pass out. And he's about to pass out. Come on, y'all gotta go. He's about to pass out. I got him right here. He's right there.
Detective, do you recognize what car just pulled up there?
I believe that was Canine Officer Brian Carter.
We've heard talk of him and what happened from then, so I'll stop it here. Judge, I don't know if I mentioned that the audio we are going to mark as State's Exhibit W. And with that, I have no further questions.
That you have what?
No further questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute afternoon recess. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on the case until it is finally submitted to you. So about 2:35. Everyone can have a seat. Councilman approach. Off the record, yeah. Just complete.
Gotta ask.
Yeah, he can sit down. You can sit
Oh,
down.
okay. Yeah, I was like, yes, sir.
Remember, legally, you're still sitting in the state.
Yes. Yes, I'm just gonna stay right here. Do this all the time. Think someone go out there and talk to people? Damn, think someone go talk to people? Like, come on, man. This is not my first rodeo. Yeah. Yeah, it's just habit. Yeah, that's true. It's probably cooler back there, huh? Yeah. I started to walk back there and I was like, very stiff. Yeah. Down there. Oh, but you still have to be here? You're like, why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah. This will be interesting.
Have a seat. You guys can all have a seat. Back on the record, 19 CR 1662, State of Ohio versus Andrew Mitchell. Do we need to put anything on the record prior to bringing in the jury?
I don't think so, Judge.
All right, let's go get the jury. can I have a seat? Detective Shepard, you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, sir.
We've known each other for quite a while, right?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you again. We know each other
too.
both professionally and personally, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
I just want to walk through some concepts, and as always, if I go too fast, you'll slow me down, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can call me Mark, Detective, that's no problem, all right? Let's talk about the CERT team. How many people are on the CERT team, Detective?
We have 12 detectives and we have 2 sergeants.
And those detectives and sergeants, they are of a certain expertise or level of experience, correct?
Yes, sir.
A brand-new person on homicide is not going to be a lead person on the CERT team, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned that rotates, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many times have you been a member of a CERT team?
On a call out,
Yes, sir.
I've been on CERT for, it was a little over 9 years. So I probably responded on probably about 60 call outs.
And how many have you been the lead detective on?
I think 18.
Okay. And Detective, is it fair to say that, I mean, you do a very thorough job no matter what the situation involves, correct?
Correct.
And is it fair to say, though, but when you have a CERT situation, a critical incident response team, it needs to be as transparent as possible because one unit of Columbus Division of Police is reviewing what a Columbus police officer did, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that has to be, you have to poke holes, you have to look at all sides of the evidence no matter where it takes you or leads you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you know that it's going to be reviewed both administratively, correct?
Yes.
As well as through the potential grand jury process because of a shooting, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's your belief that you did a quality job here, you did a thorough job here, and regardless of who reviews it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you do that, you mentioned to Mr. Cable on direct that eventually on those 60 or 18 you've been involved in your lead, you usually get a statement from the officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned an attorney was with Andy, but it's not a criminal attorney, it's a labor attorney, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you work with those people all the time.
Yes, sir.
You guys have protocols and certain things, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's understandings that you don't ever really do an interview of an officer or get a written statement right away in those situations, correct?
Correct.
And the reason is because those people have been through a traumatic situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
They may have difficulty remembering what occurred, correct?
Yes.
And they may remember things down the road, correct?
Yes, sir.
Someone who's been through that type of critical incident or trauma-like situation, in fact, might not remember very many details at all, correct?
It's possible, yes.
And that's not uncommon, correct?
Right.
Okay. And so there's a time period that goes by, and the first thing you're given is a written statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you hope that the officer involved gives as much as they recall, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I think in this situation, you received a written statement about a month later, correct?
Yes.
Then about a month after that, you sat down and discussed things with my client, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he's under no obligation to do that, correct?
Correct.
He did that voluntarily and gave a voluntarily written statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you interviewed him roughly a month later, before you received the written statement, my client did not hear the audio tape, correct?
Correct.
Before you received the written statement, my client did not see the videotape.
Correct.
Once you had the interview, at some point towards the middle or back of the interview, you then took a break and let my client listen to the audio tape, correct?
Yes, Sergeant Pilia was the one that actually did that for him.
Thank you. But that's something that you do. You question him first before he got to listen to the audio tape.
Correct.
Okay. After the audio tape, then you said, hey, does this help your recollection of anything, correct?
Yes, sir.
In this situation, my client couldn't remember that the window was down, right?
Right.
My client couldn't remember that the door was open, correct?
Correct.
Those are things that you wouldn't expect maybe somebody to remember when they're just involved in that situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had an honest belief at that point in time that Andy was doing his best to tell what he remembered, correct?
Yes, sir.
Based on all the interviews you've done and all the suspects, you didn't think he was being evasive or trying to lie to you in any way, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. And had you thought that, you would have drilled down on some things, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once you've done so many things in this case, once you sit down, you're trying to come up with a game plan of who to talk to next, what to do next, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have this audio tape, and once you had that audio tape, I'm sure you heard some things that said, hey, I've got to investigate these things, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You had the written statement where my client indicated the struggle that occurred inside the car, correct?
Objection, Judge.
Want to approach? Bet that white noise pretty loud.
Didn't hear it.
When I first took the bench, it was even louder than that. So we can turn it down a little bit. You may, Bart.
So Detective, you had a written summary and then an interview with my client, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you had the audio tape.
Yes, sir.
And based on what you heard on the audio tape, you wanted to investigate and poke holes into whether or not my client was being truthful or not, or remembering correctly or not, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based on what you heard on the audio tape, you had the idea to have the bottom of a sandal tested, correct?
Yes, sir.
What made you do that, sir?
Well, Detective Mitchell, or Mr. Mitchell, told us that Ms. Castleberry had put her feet up against his neck while he was trying to hold her hands so she couldn't cut him. And she was stretched out, pushing up against his neck, and was basically cutting his air and like pushing on his artery, so he was feeling like he was going to pass out.
So based on that, did you then approach, not these two prosecutors, but other prosecutors to see if they wanted the sandal tested?
Yes, sir.
And what was their response?
No.
Did you do it anyway?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just doing this because I don't want to. And Your Honor, for the record, I've marked these as defendant's exhibit. I'm not sure depending on which ones they put in or not, so I'm going to do that. May I approach a witness, Your Honor?
You may. Would you mark it defendant's exhibit?
Defendant's exhibit 1. I'm approaching you with this mark for identification purposes, defendant's exhibit 1. Will you take a look at that?
Okay.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that is?
A pair of sandals.
And is that a photograph in process with the investigation of this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are those the sandals that you had tested for DNA?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, sorry, can't see it too well. The left sandal, they're both turned upside down, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's my understanding that on the bottom of one of Ms. Castleberry's sandals was DNA associated with my client, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Only on the bottom of one of the sandals, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. It was, the only DNA on there was in fact my client on the bottom of her sandal.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those are the types of things you're looking to do, Detective, when you are putting the case file together, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things I think you heard on the audio tape was when Ms. Castleberry said a person kidnapping prostitutes and showing your picture around, correct?
Yes.
Based on that, you went and interviewed Sergeant Rapp, Sergeant Evans, and Sergeant Pelfrey,
Correct.
Sergeant Pelfrey is head of the sexual abuse unit, correct?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Rapp's in charge of the human trafficking unit, correct?
Yes.
And Sergeant Evans at the time was in charge of the vice unit.
Yes, sir.
And you went and asked them, hey, prior to August 23rd of 18, the week or two prior to that, have you heard anything about anybody kidnapping prostitutes?
Yes.
And unanimously, they said, no, we did not in the couple weeks prior to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So again, that's another example of things you're going through to determine the credibility or poking holes in cases and things like that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, based on the audio tape, there was an issue of whether or not Ms. Castleberry believed that my client was a police officer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, my client, on that audio tape, you could see my client showed him a picture of his ID, correct?
Yes.
And in that ID, in fact, it shows with a Columbus white police officer uniform on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Also showed handcuffs, correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say the handcuffs that the police department has are different than handcuffs you can buy in a store or something like that?
They're pretty much the same.
Okay. But having handcuffs and the key with it, with other information that was shown to her, correct?
Yes.
An affidavit and a U-10-100 was shown to her based on the audio tape, correct?
Yes.
And those are items that you can't get online, you can't get at the courthouse. They're specific only to detectives and officers who are going to fill out those complaints, correct?
Yes, like the U-10 we use is for Columbus only.
Correct. And because you don't want it out there, people having access to that or pretending to be police officers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you heard on there that, hey, you can get that at the courthouse, you can't get those things at the courthouse.
No, sir.
The public has no access to those, correct?
Correct.
Same with an affidavit that when someone fills out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in your career, you've been in homicide for quite some time. Where were you before homicide?
Assault squad.
Okay. And in assault squad, that's kind of some of the punches and fist fights and sometimes a knife and stuff like that.
Yeah, shootings and pretty much everything where a person doesn't die, if it's
Exactly.
felony in nature.
Felony in nature, high felonies, felonies twos, felonious assaults and things like that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Anytime where someone doesn't die.
Correct.
You would agree with me that this knife in this question is a dangerous weapon.
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that my client received a serious physical injury in this situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that knife can cause death if used, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and those are all serious offenses.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you would interview people or how long did you work patrol, sir?
About 4 years.
Okay, and in your relationship and working patrol, coming upon people or having to arrest them, you've come into contact with many forms of noncompliance, correct?
Yes, sir.
What types of noncompliance have you come into contact with?
Typically, you'll have people run, you'll have people, curl up and they won't give you their arms, and people will start fighting you.
And you have to try to anticipate that or try to be proactive, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've heard the term an action is faster than a reaction, correct?
That is correct.
What does that mean for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Well, if I walk up to you and I go to punch you, I'm gonna hit you before you can try to block my punch. I mean, unless you're like Bruce Lee or something.
Okay.
But other than that, or if you have your gun out, your reaction is gonna be faster than me trying to get my gun out. So it's just a reaction time.
So hypothetically, if someone has a knife out, they're going to be able to use that knife prior to you being able to defend yourself.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you've encompassed people who have different forms of impairment, correct, when you place them under arrest?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say the more impaired or the different types of things they're on in their system, the more unpredictable they are?
Yes, sir.
Less rational they are?
Yes, sir.
Irrational, so to speak, correct?
Yes.
Now, back in 2018, if someone had a felony charge, they had to be taken to custody, correct?
Yes.
If someone had a misdemeanor, it was up to the officer's discretion,
Yes.
whether to summons them in or take them in, correct?
Yes, sir.
But in 2018, if someone had a warrant, they had to be taken in as well.
Yes, sir.
Now, subsequently, Mr. Cable asked you, had you done any investigation with regards to if Ms. Castleberry had a warrant, correct?
I believe so, yes.
What did you do in that situation, sir?
We typically, we will come back and then do our own research, like check county records, and and see if there's warrants issued or not for that person. We call it a 50 check. So you will run it, and then they will tell you the person's been arrested for this, been arrested for this. We also go down to our records unit, and we give them the person's information, and then they will run a check, kind of like a statewide check. We do, it's called a FBI BCI check, and they check nationwide, like warrants and stuff for the person.
Okay, and may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Hey,
I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as identification for identification purposes, Defense Exhibit 3. If you could take a look at that two-page document, and when you're done, if you could let the ladies and gentlemen of the jury know what that is.
This is from the Franklin County Clerk of Courts. It's a warrant for her arrest.
Okay. And might I take that back?
Oh, yes, sir.
Also, may I have the other? So on page 1 of Defendant's Exhibit number 3, there's a timestamp on there, correct?
Yes.
And what is that date?
August 21st of 2018.
Okay, so that means that the municipal judge, Judge Jody Thomas, at the bottom,
Yes, sir.
signed a warrant or an order in called
Yes.
because the individual, Ms. Castleberry, did not appear for a sentencing.
Correct.
Okay, and so that then goes into a system, correct?
Yes, sir.
Page 2 is what gets sent out in things, so you have access to that, correct, when you're on duty?
Yes, sir.
Patrol officers have access to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is that a fair and accurate depiction of the documents that you obtained?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so people have access, and an officer who doesn't have an undercover officer who doesn't have a terminal in the car, they can call in to see if someone has a warrant, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's just a matter of punching up the records and determining that.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you heard Mr. Mitchell say, hey, if you don't have any warrants, I'm not gonna arrest you,
Yes.
meaning taking into custody.
Correct.
Still getting charged, I'm just not gonna take you into custody.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Usually someone knows if they don't appear for court, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's gonna be a warrant issued if they don't appear for court.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the area. Now, they got to go to that scene. How would you describe that in terms of the type of crime associated in that area, Detective?
Well, there's a lot of prostitution, drug dealing in that particular area. It's kind of low-income area, so there's a lot of problems out there.
And what comes along with the prostitution? Drugs associated with it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Weapons, correct?
Yes, sir.
Addictions and things of that nature, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Detective, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a defensive wound is?
A defensive wound is if I were to take my gun and shoot at you guys and put your hands up, you can tell that, I'm trying to, you're not gonna stop a bullet with your hands, but people with just natural reaction to put their hands up. Same thing with a knife wound. If I put my hands up, I'm gonna get cut, because that's the first thing that the weapon's gonna come into contact with.
So if someone's trying to fend off a knife attack, it's not uncommon to have a nick or two on another hand or someplace else, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
me?
For the record, Detective, I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes, Defendant's Exhibit 4 through 7, or 4 through 8. And if you'll take a look at those and let me know when you're done. May I have those back?
Yes, sir.
So let's start first with Defendant's Exhibit 4. That is a photograph that was taken by your team at the hospital, correct?
Yes, that was taken out the hospital.
Of Mr. Mitchell's slash and wound to that thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you testified, you know that he had to have multiple surgeries for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Exhibit number, 6. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that is.
That's just another picture from a different angle. His hand's kind of cut off by the edge there,
I'm
but
gonna move it for you in a sec. How's that?
so that's just him in the hospital, and it's just a different angle.
Okay. And now there's 2 pictures Defendant's Exhibit 7, and you can't see it very well on here, and Defendant's Exhibit 8. Those are of his left hand, correct?
Yes, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? If you'll take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 8 and 7, and tell the ladies and gentlemen what you see on the left, or the left hand there.
Yeah, there's some small wounds, or nicks, I guess, if you want to call them.
Is that consistent with someone who might receive some defensive wounds?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I have those back? Thank you, Melissa. And again, those are fair and accurate copies of the originals that were taken by your team, correct?
Yes, sir.
Same with Defendant's Exhibit 1, the bottom of the sando with the DNA sample.
Yes, sir.
Now, you also obtained in your investigation medical records, correct?
Yes, sir.
As it relates to my client.
Yes, sir.
And why did you do that, sir?
To show the extent of his injury.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 9. Will you take a look at that? Good. And are those a fair and accurate depiction of the medical records showing the type of medication, the type of injury, and the surgery that was done?
Yes, sir.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the originals you obtained?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Detective, I want to switch now to the day of and some of the things you did and some of the things you gathered, okay?
Okay.
First, Mr. Cable, and again, we'll probably admit his exhibits, but I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 9 and 10.
I thought you already just did 9 for
I might have, Judge.
I think it's 10.
How about 10 and 11? All right. I'm sure Ms. Stevens has a big mark next to my name for that one. May I approach the witness?
May.
Okay. Take a look at those. You're familiar with those, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to publish them, and we'll go over each. So first, Defendant's Exhibit 10. What's that a picture of?
That's the picture of the front driver's seat with the bullet strike in it.
Okay. And what that is that's a bullet path that either came in or out, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the significance of that, why it was photographed, is because there's soot and stippling there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what soot and stippling is.
When you fire a gun, if there's something close in contact, like clothing and stuff, you'll see like the little black marks around it, and it's just from the gunpowder, coming out of the barrel of the gun.
It's things that are released from the
the gases,
handgun,
yes.
The gases and the heat that make an impression or a mark. They leave some dark marks or things like that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's an example of stippling and soot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in a situation like that, if you know, normally it has to be pretty close. The gun must have been pretty close to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Usually from about 0 to 18 inches.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's also my understanding that, and when Mr. Cable showed you the picture from the coroner's report and stuff like that of the entrance and the exit wounds,
Yes, sir.
that the entrance and exit wounds to the leg had stippling and soot.
Yes, sir.
So that would mean regardless of how the body was positioned, the gun had to be fairly close to that area.
Yes.
Now, stippling and soot can be present sometimes, but prevented by clothing, correct?
Yes, sir.
So a gunshot might be, the gun might be closer to an object, but if there's clothing on there, the actual skin might not show stippling or soot.
Yes, sir.
But in this situation with a leg, that one had stippling and soot.
Yes, sir.
So we can say pretty much for sure the gun had to be pretty close
close.
to that area. Okay. And the same, this is just another angle of, for Defendant's 11, another angle of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, what happens then, you have no idea which way that bullet can go after that, correct?
Correct.
Why so?
Because bullets tumble like when they hit something, so it might be going this way, but if it hits something, it may direct it down or may direct it up. It's just, you don't know.
Right, so now let's talk about some of the bullet paths Mr. Cable talked about in the car, okay?
Yes, sir.
So, but we know for sure there that a firearm was on one side of that headrest and the bullet went through, correct?
Yes, sir.
After that, we don't know where it went.
Correct.
Now, we do know that if I'm facing, I'll face the same way as you. May I approach you? Okay. So if you and I are in the front seat, or we're looking down the back seat,
Okay.
okay, for the record. We do know that there's one that goes way up left,
Right.
front to back.
Yes, sir.
We do know that there's one that goes way down to the right.
Right.
Down into the tire.
Yes, sir.
So one in this direction, one in that direction, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we do know that a bullet ends up and goes through the back seat into the trunk.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We know that there's one inside of her in the leg
Yes, sir.
and here, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can't tell what order those happen, correct?
Correct.
When you labeled them for when Mr. Cable went over them, that's just how they're identifying them, not the order or the situation, correct?
Yes.
But it's pretty, this is a wide range of way up left, middle, way down right, correct?
Yes.
And if you compare that to physical evidence, Mr. Detective Shepard, potentially someone might be moving, a moving target, correct?
Yes, sir.
If someone was stationary target, like when you go to the range, you practice on stationary targets, correct?
Yes, sir.
Stationary target, most of the bullets are gonna be in the same path, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you participated in active shooting response training?
Yes, sir.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen jury what that is.
Well, you talking about on what we did or during that time, the
Yes, sir.
shooting, the decision course?
Yes, sir.
During that phase of firearms, we call it phase 4, and it's a decision course. So typically, we don't walk on the range. You never walk on the range. But in this case, one officer would go on the range. So if I was the range officer, I would put my hand on the officer's back to be behind him. So obviously, I want to be next to him in front of his gun. They have things set up out in the range, and like the targets will turn, and it might be a guy holding a beer can. Like they give you a scenario. They say, hey, you're walking up to UDF, and you got a 911 call. So you walk up, and then the target will turn. So the guy might have a beer in his hand, he might have a gun, or he might be holding somebody hostage, and you have to react to it. So that was the course of fire that we were using during this time.
Okay. And in fact, there's 3 different types of threats, correct?
Yes.
Non-threat,
Yes.
indeterminate.
Yes.
With indeterminate, you gotta be a little leery or not sure, right?
Right.
But then a definite actual threat.
Yes, sir.
And you're trained and taught with an actual threat, you fire until the threat is stopped,
Correct.
correct? Doesn't matter how many shots, until the threat is stopped.
Yes, sir.
And you have to assume that that threat's gonna keep coming, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then in terms of at the range, that's a controlled setting, right?
Yes, sir.
A big space,
Yes, sir.
you have your earphones on.
Yes, sir.
Have you fired a weapon without your earphones on?
Yes.
Okay, how does that feel?
It's deafening.
Can you hear anything?
Not for a little while.
Okay. And if you ever fired a gun inside of a car?
No.
Okay. Have you ever fired from the inside of a car out?
No.
You haven't had that training?
No.
Okay. You would agree with me that the smaller the confines, the worse the effects are gonna be on your ears?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you mentioned to Mr. Cable that there was a gun jam in this situation.
Yes.
And the shell casing did not get ejected.
Correct.
And did you then investigate potential causes of that?
Yes.
Okay. And is it my understanding that one of the causes could be what they call a limp wrist syndrome, correct?
Yes.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that is.
When you're firing a gun, if you don't keep your wrist tight and straight, and you're letting the gun do this, just the action of the gun will not let that round eject. It won't let that casing come out because you're not keeping the gun stiff. So you have to, and I don't know if any of you ever fired a gun, but you have to keep your wrist straight, because if you're loose too, the bullets are going all over the place. So you have to try to keep your wrist locked out.
So the bullets go all over the place, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in that situation, now which is your dominant hand? Which do you shoot with?
Right.
Okay. And do you ever practice with your left?
Yes.
Okay. Do you practice with both?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of a situation, a limp wrist, someone with a severe injury might not be able to fire, correct?
Correct.
You're under, or could cause that jam, correct?
Yes.
And based on your investigation, it's my understanding that you found out that both hands were used at times by Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
based on the interview, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some things at the scene, okay?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, or you heard on the audio tape, or videotape, you saw a lady who helped Mr. Mitchell, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? This is state search. Defendant's exhibit 12. Thank you, Judge. If you'll tell ladies and gentlemen, jury, what that is.
That is Ms. Patton's tank top.
Okay, and from what you understand, Ms. Patton took her tank top off and wrapped Mr. Mitchell's hand, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was told to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, does this picture that was taken fairly and accurately depict how it was at the scene on that August date?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as part of your investigation, did you also, in these types of cases, review the 911 call?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a disc cover sheet that is Defendant's Exhibit 13, and Ms. Stevens is going to play that for you now, okay?
Yes, sir.
That's great.
I need a police officer in an ambulance at 3055 South Hill. You have a police officer down bleeding in the back. You said a police? Yeah, you have a police officer down in the back bleeding. He's been nice. He's on Bellows and Yale. Do you want me to get a shirt so I can wrap your hand up? They love to get another shirt.
What happened on me, huh?
I don't know, but I'm taking my shirt off and I'm wrapping his shoes in so you can't get a shot.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the 911 call
Yes, sir.
that was contained in your case file?
Yes, sir.
And that was the lady at the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
Identifying Mr. Mitchell as a police officer to the 911 call?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit, Detective, about, Mr. Cable played for you the full audio and the full video, right?
Yes.
That was a process to get that through, I mean, to get that all together, correct?
Yes.
And you had help from, in that situation? Help from outside agencies?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so what the ladies and gentlemen of the jury saw today and heard today is a culmination of multiple people working together to try to sync things, correct?
Yes.
When you first saw it, it didn't look like that, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree with me, you can't really see what happens in the car there, correct?
Correct.
And the audio recording it's a machine, correct? By the cell phone in there.
By the cell phone, yes.
Doesn't work like the human ear, correct?
Correct.
Sound waves don't affect it like it affects the human ear, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's kind of go over what Mr. Cable just played there. It's clear my client asked her if she had any weapons, correct?
Yes.
She did not respond.
Correct.
Okay. We know she had a weapon, correct?
Yes.
So she lied about that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's clear that in this situation, and you've reviewed that audio tape many times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Too many more than you want to, correct?
Exactly.
And it's clear on there that she directed my client where to go, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's clear that my client had to ask, hey, what cross streets are we on?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that so? Why do sometimes undercover vice detectives have to go where the prostitute wants to go?
In order to get the elements of the crime, and when she's telling him where to go, then she truly thinks he is a John or a guy trying to pick up a prostitute.
Right, because if he says, hey, no, we're going over here, she might know, correct?
Yeah, she might have some
Suspicions.
understanding, yes.
All right, so, and it's clear that there were the legal elements there to charge her with prostitution, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, solicitation,
Solicitation.
I apologize. And you heard that on there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, And it's clear that the conversation was, if you don't have any warrants or you don't resist, I won't arrest you, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And he asked her, do you have any warrants?
yes,
She did not answer it, and she hid that, so to speak, correct?
she didn't tell him.
She didn't tell him she had a warrant out, right?
Yes,
Okay. Those are two things. Whether someone has a weapon or whether someone has a warrant out is stuff that you want to know as a police officer, correct?
yes, sir,
For both of the protections,
yes, sir.
for both people. Okay. Now, you also heard my client say something like, you don't believe who I am? And her response was, oh, I didn't say that, correct? Right. So those are her words saying, I didn't say I don't believe who you are, right?
Yes, sir,
And my client answered every one of her questions, correct?
yes, sir,
My client showed her his handcuffs.
yes,
My client showed her his U-10-100
yes,
affidavit, as well as his Cpd Id, correct?
yes,
All of those things that a reasonable police officer would do in that situation, answering her questions, correct?
yes, sir,
And at this point, it's calm, right?
yes,
There's a back and forth. It doesn't escalate until my client says he's going to handcuff her, correct?
yes, sir,
And Ms. Castleberry increased that, correct?
yes, sir.
She's the one,
Objection, Judge.
Excuse me?
Objection, Judge, on the characterization of who escalated that. They can hear
I'm
they
gonna
can hear
overrule
it
it.
themselves.
I'm gonna overrule. Go, you can ask a question.
thank you, Your Honor. Based on the audio of what you heard, who escalated it, Detective?
Ms. Castleberry
Ms.
did.
Castleberry did, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did she comply with being handcuffed?
No, sir.
She not only didn't comply, she told him, don't put your hands on me, I'm not gonna comply, correct?
Yes, sir.
You heard on the tape her say, I'm not going to, don't touch me, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that point in time, that's when the escalation occurred, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, prior to that, in the video, you see the gentleman walking by, correct?
Yes, sir.
Her tone of voice at that point was, hey, can you help me?
Right.
Wasn't excited, right?
Yes, sir.
Guy comes over, as your understanding, my client shows him his ID, right?
Yes, sir.
That guy left the scene, right?
Yes.
It's your understanding he went into his apartment complex.
Yes.
Okay, so he was up close to the car and looked in and saw what was going on, right?
Yes.
And then left the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, after that, once the struggle started, you hear on the tapes the grunts, correct?
Yes.
You hear on the tape the fight and the struggle, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that continues from the point where he tries to handcuff her until he hits to the 10-3, correct?
Yes.
It's an ongoing struggle and an ongoing physical assault by Ms. Castleberry towards my client, correct?
Yes.
Objection, Judge. He can't know that from looking at that. He just said he can't tell what's going on, and to say it's an
I'll
assault.
sustain it. I'll sustain it.
Based on what you heard, Detective,
Right.
did the struggle continue the entire time?
Yes.
Again. Objection.
I will
Thank you.
move on.
You may answer the question.
Yes, there was an ongoing struggle.
Thank you, sir. Now, the handcuffs, okay? In that video, and based on your investigation, the handcuffs didn't just drop out of the car, correct?
Correct.
Who threw the handcuffs out of the car?
Ms. Castleberry did.
And where would the handcuffs get thrown out of the car at?
Between the building and the car on the passenger side.
What number am I on? May I approach you on it? I'm handing you a been marked for identification purposes, Defendant's Exhibit 14. Are those the handcuffs you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the handcuffs get thrown out of that, and that's a fair and accurate copy of the original?
Yes, sir.
And the handcuffs get thrown out of the car by Ms. Castleberry, correct?
Yes, sir.
Another sign of non-compliance, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on there, you heard the grunts and the heavy breathing and the fight, correct?
Yes, sir.
In that situation, what's your training tell you in that situation in general, Detective Shepard? Is it uncommon for people to have a fight or flight type reaction?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Cable asked you about the size of Ms. Castleberry, correct?
Yes.
And what was her size?
I believe she was about 5'6", 5'7", about 110 pounds.
Based on your experience, Detective, When you've had to arrest people, or you've had to take in people, have you been surprised about how physically strong or quick they were, depending on their size?
Yes, sir.
What matters? What can contribute to that, Detective?
Some people are just naturally strong, or if they're on something or
If they
different
were on
things.
cocaine?
Yes,
If they were on fentanyl?
possible, yes.
And those are two things that, based on the coroner's report and toxicology report, you found were in her system, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you were aware that there was fentanyl, cocaine, high amounts of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And a veterinary drug, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were aware that that was taken at a relatively close proximity of time as to this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
And based on your experience and training and understanding, that definitely can affect how someone perceives something, correct?
Yes, sir.
That definitely can affect how someone reacts in response to a lawful request to handcuff somebody, correct?
Yes, sir.
My client was lawfully allowed to say, I'm going to handcuff you, and use force to do that because he had the elements for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then, who introduced the knife into the equation?
Ms. Castleberry.
Okay, now that knife, Mr. Cable had it, it folds in, correct?
Yes.
So at some point, that knife had to be unfolded, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that knife is a big knife, so to speak, correct? It's not a little pocket knife or a Swiss Army knife or something like that.
I mean,
It's a dumb question. It is what it is. It's the size it is. I apologize. So in that situation, you're aware that during the struggle, my client was belted into a seat, correct?
yes.
Okay. And you were aware that during the struggle, he's in his seat belted, she's unbelted, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware in that situation.
Approach. Doing all right, Tammy?
May I continue, Your Honor?
May.
Detective, focusing on the audio you heard Ms. Castleberry, in fact, say, acknowledging what Vice does, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What did that mean to you when you heard her say, yeah, I know Vice, I know what Vice does?
That she had probably been arrested for soliciting.
And that he might be Vice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Your moment's coming to you.
Come on. Just one more brief topic. Mr. Cable asked you about being a friend of Andy Mitchell, correct? A coworker.
Yes, sir.
You've had to investigate, as part of the CERT team, other friends, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've had to investigate people that you're close to in the CERT situation with other uses of force that you're friends with, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is the fact that you were friends with them or you're friends with him affect anything that you do in your professional job, Detective Shepard?
No, sir.
Okay. I thank you for your professionalism and your time today. Thank you so much.
Any redirect?
Thank you. Mr. Collins mentioned that you had investigated whether there were prior things going on because of what she said in that audio tape, right?
Yes, sir.
were you, did you become aware through your investigation that there was some thought that she might have been party to an assault that had happened a week prior?
Yes,
And did you investigate that?
yes.
And did you find out whether Ms. Castleberry in fact had been stopped?
Out of that incident, no.
Okay, did she have an interaction with police that you were able to listen to?
Yes, another, it was about a month, I believe, prior.
Okay, and how did that go?
They were in a different area.
I'm gonna object at this point in time.
Brooks, you can inquire further.
Thank you. Okay, and that was a month prior or so?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. When you go up on a scene as a detective and you have just civilians, let's take police officers out of it,
Yes, sir.
and one person stabs another, but they're still there, not critically injured, do you interview that person right there at the scene?
With the,
The person who's been stabbed, if they can talk?
if they're not being transported to the hospital, yes, we will talk to them at the scene.
And if they're being transported, do you often go down to the hospital and talk to them at the hospital?
Yes, sir.
Is it important to get the information as soon as you can from them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When is the first time you became familiar with what I believe was introduced as limp wrist syndrome?
Our firearms people tell us that all the time. When we're qualifying or out there practicing, they kind of stand behind us and they watch you shoot. And then they try to walk up and tell you what you're doing wrong. And then they will say, hey, you know, you're limp wristing it. That's why all your shots are going down and to the right or down to the left or wherever. So they will come up and correct you as you're shooting.
Have you ever personally had a gun jammed for that reason?
No,
Have you seen one jammed for that particular reason?
I haven't.
Okay. Mr. Collins indicated, and I think he kind of answered the question about, Mr. Mitchell would not have had access to information telling him that Donna Castleberry had a warrant at that time. Is that correct?
Unless he ran a 50 check on her.
And do you have any evidence that he did that?
No.
So did the idea or the knowledge that she had a warrant come after during your investigation?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that based upon the wounds and the stippling and some things like that, that it would be hard sometimes to tell because the body might be moving. Is that right? About where the positioning would be because she might be moving? Maybe I'm saying it wrong. There was some indication about how trajectories are, and it might be hard to tell if the body's moving around, where the bullet entered and came out and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Can that same kind of movement be because the person with the gun is moving around?
Yes, sir.
You indicated there, I believe Mr. Collins asked you about signs of, what was that? Signs of non-cooperation,
Okay.
I think. There was another word. But anyway, signs that she wasn't cooperating with him. Did you also, in your review of that tape, see signs of fear?
I mean, her voice, yes, listening to it.
Okay. Can fear cause people to have tremendous strength?
Yes.
A lot of things can do that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think you mentioned several times the size of Donna Castleberry, and we're going to admit the coroner's report, and you mentioned you were down there. Would it surprise you at all to know that she's 5'4" and 116?
No, I mean,
Okay?
yeah.
Okay. That's all I have. Oh, sorry.
Questions as a result of those questions?
I think he has one more.
No, that's all.
Any questions?
Just briefly, Hunter. Mr. Cable just asked you about a 50. What's a 50?
It's a check for a warrant.
Okay. And you heard Mr. Mitchell tell Mr. Castleberry, I'm going to run a 50.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, step down, detective. We'll just leave everything there. If they want it, they can come get it.
We'll come get it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna break for the day. And we're gonna be back, we'll start back up. We did an amazingly job today. We'll get it back by, I think we started about 9:20, 9:30. But if you can be here by 8:45, then we'll try and start at 9 and go from there. Everyone, go have a good evening. Oh, hold on. Do not discuss the case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on the case until it is finally submitted to you. Now have a good evening.
For Friday afternoon. I guess it might.
You gotta work with them.
It's hard. I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, we'll make some calls and try to have, I mean, I guess, Judge, what's your preference? If they're done by noon on Friday, do you want us then to call some witnesses on Friday afternoon?
Yeah, if you have them.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that.